Welcome to another episode of Culinary School Stories, the bi-weekly podcast that is dedicated to sharing the stories of people around the globe whose lives have been influenced, impacted, touched, and or enriched, for good or for bad, from their culinary school experience. Hi, my name is Colin Roach, and I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. You are an important part of this show, where we ask the question, what's your culinary school story? So now, without any further delay, let's meet today's guest. So I want to start right out by saying welcome and thank you for joining us on the Culinary School Stories. It's a real pleasure to have you and welcome.
Oh, thanks. I'm super happy to be here.
Great. So, as mentioned, my guest today is Chef Nikki Pettineo, and she has a unique perspective because she not only was a culinary student, but was also a culinary instructor. So we're going to hear all about that. But let's start out with our first question. Why did you choose to go to culinary school?
I chose to go to culinary school. I went back to school a little bit later in life. So I was like 24. I thought I was like super old, going back to school. I chose culinary school because I'm not very an academic person. I wasn't very good at math. I wasn't very good at, a subject I really excelled in, except for food and beverage. I loved food and beverage. So when I graduated high school, I did a little bit of college and then I just flunked out. But I worked in restaurants and I was bartending and cooking and serving and all that. And I just said, you know what, if this is something I'm passionate about, then I should try and get a degree, in the field. So I went back and I actually did really well. Why
did you pick Johnson & Wales and specifically the Miami campus? Did you look at any other schools before you chose that one?
I am from South Florida, and so I was looking at South Florida schools. I did not want to leave the area because, I was paying rent and stuff. And for me to uproot my life, it was, at the time, it seemed like I wanted to stay in South Florida, and I chose Johnson & Wales because it was an accredited university, whereas some other choices were at the time were Le Cordon Bleu and the Art Institute, and I know they had accreditation problems, so I just wanted to, go to a school that was accredited, and I was going to come out with a degree rather than a certificate, because if I didn't stay in the culinary field, at least I had an associate degree.
Right. I get it. Think back to that first day. You said that you were a little of an older student at the time. You weren't the typical right out of high school. How did you feel when you got on campus? I mean, that first day, obviously there's probably excitement, there's probably some nervousness in there, but kind of take us back to that day, if you remember, and what it was like. What was going through your head?
2004 probably was when I started school. I remember the orientation and all the chefs are there and they all have their neckerchiefs on, and I remember being late and running to the place where we had the orientation, and I don't remember who it was. He stopped me and folded my neckerchief for me, my neck, and fixed it for me, and that was my first experience. I was rattled and stuff, and it's all these younger people, and I'm I zoom up in my little Honda Civic and late, and and Chef Hensley kind of made not look like an idiot. So that's what I remember.
What was your first class? Do you remember, and who the instructor was?
I think my first lab was with Chef Brian, and it was nutrition. I think before that I had beverage, with Chef Green, and it was it was already in my wheelhouse because I was already a bartender. So, it was interesting.
Did you have a favorite class, or what was your worst class?
I did love meat cutting. It was a great class. So interesting because you're in this butcher shop and you got, what's his name? Chef Lazar, and he's super knowledgeable, and so I loved that class a lot. My least favorite, I did not really care for garde manger. Some of the things that you learn there are so old school that they're not really relevant. And I don't even think you guys teach it like that anymore. Garde manger was all aspic and gelatinized everything and goo everywhere. So,
Yeah, it's changed a few times. What is one thing you wish you knew before you went to culinary school? Once you got there, boy, I wish I knew that. I wish I had that and knew that in advance. Is there anything?
I might change your question a little bit and just say that I wish I didn't have such a chip on my shoulder that I was a little bit older, because now So I think that kind of held me back from having experiences that I could have had. Like I could have put more effort into my externship and done something really, gone off and done something, but I stayed here or I stayed in South Florida. So I wish I would have kind of let myself be more educated, like really have the experience rather than saying, well, I'm too old for this and I should be this far ahead and all that stuff. So.
Did you get along with the other students at the time because they were younger, or did you find there was older students as well?
There was very few older students and that were like my same age. I got along with. I mean, I typically get along with everybody, so just that kind of personality. Never met a stranger.
If someone asked you for advice, they wanted to go to culinary school, or they wanted to get into this industry, what would you say to them?
What people have asked me over the years is that, they've heard that culinary school is expensive and it's really what you make of it as far as the opportunities you create for yourself. So it all depends on your attitude and your drive because, hard work and dedication is the bridge to success, I feel. And I've experienced that in my career as well. So the more I networked and the more effort I put into my career, I got that back 15-fold. I worked on private yachts. I worked for football players. I've had a really amazing and fun career that when I talk about it, people are like, wow, you did that, and so, but it's that way because I made it that way. So my advice to people when they ask about going to culinary school is just, be sure that it's your passion. And whatever you do, don't listen to everybody saying it's expensive. You're going to get out and make $10 an hour. Yes, you can do that. That can happen. It can be a thing that happens to you. However, if you take control of the wheel and you say, I'm going to do, and you network and you meet the right people and you show up and work hard, you're going to get anything you want. So that's my advice.
I agree. You were a culinary instructor for a while there. Maybe you could tell us how that was. And two, the students changed from when you were in culinary school to what you see now, and how so, if they did change?
I was a culinary instructor at a accredited university, Keiser University, for 6 years, over 6 years. It was a big change from being a student. I had a fun time teaching because it helped me solidify the things that I already knew, and so it's like I got to go to culinary school for 6.5 extra years, which I loved. I just love learning about food, teaching about food, and just seeing the excitement in people when they get something right and and they do well in their career after, and they come back and they're like, I'm executive sous chef at the Biltmore and all that kind of stuff. I think that's amazing. And
what happened? You moved on to something new after teaching?
I did. I went to FSU to be executive chef at a restaurant called Seminole Cafe, which is one of their it's the second largest residential dining hall that they have. But then my goal was to work for a food distributor like for a long time. I had this goal. I really wanted to work for Cisco or Cheney Brothers, just for quality of life and the opportunity to succeed. And that was always in my plan. And Cisco ended up contacting me when I was working at FSU, and I said, I'm taking this opportunity.
You take us back to some of those earlier positions that you had, and maybe some of the listeners may be interested. Like, what kind of jobs can you get when you get out of culinary school? I know you mentioned some of the professional athletes that you worked with and that yacht and how big that was and got to travel. And maybe you could elaborate a little bit on those different jobs.
I didn't know that Fort Lauderdale is the yachting capital of the entire world. I had no idea. I lived on the west side of Fort Lauderdale. On the east side is where all the boats are and stuff like that. I remember seeing, yachties and boat, white shirts and khakis and stuff, but I never paid attention to any of that. And when I was bartending, I had people come I worked at an upscale steakhouse, and people would come in and they would be like, you should go get on a yacht. You have a degree. And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, you can make all this money. They never listened. But then I had a restaurant for a few years, but it was during the world financial crash. So it was hard to maintain that financially. So I ended up, just basically giving my share to my partner. And I learned about working on a boat from the dental hygienist at my dentist office.
Wow.
And she was like, hey, have you ever heard of this thing called day working on boats? And I was like, no. So she gave me the website, and I went and I created a profile, and I thought zero things about it. And I was really, I needed a job, and I needed something, something extraordinary to happen. And I was just sitting there in a mall one day, and I was, like a couple days later eating an ice cream cone. And this guy with an Australian accent calls me, and he's like asking me if I'm available to work. And I was like, yeah, all right, sure, no problem. So I go to the boat, and I was basically like a relief chef for the chef that was on board, so he could like take time off. And I just cooked for the crew. We never left the dock, and they paid me a ridiculous amount of money. And then they ended up liking me. They were like, we really like you. We want to take you with us. So they left. They went to Spain, and then they sent me a plane ticket like 2 months later, and I flew to Spain, and I was on that boat for 2 years. And I lived on board, and we did our summers in the Mediterranean and our winters in the Caribbean, and we went to the Galapagos, and when you are on a private yacht in the Galapagos, it's an extraordinary experience that is like, it's like a once in a lifetime thing, but it's like standard yachty lifestyle, we're just going to the Galapagos, whatever. So that to me, like if I knew about that and I really took it seriously, that would have been a really great career if I lived in South Florida, and worked on a boat, because, you could get on a boat that's just bebopping around in the Caribbean, or, you could be international like I was, and just, go everywhere. And so it made the world very small, which was amazing. So if I had like a 3-day weekend, and I was in Europe, we spent 6 months out of the year in Europe. So I would just take a plane to go see a friend in, in Italy, or I'd go to Spain, or, because once you're in Europe, the flights are super cheap. So you just go wherever you want.
What an opportunity. Yeah,
it was extraordinary. And I would encourage anyone that is like, hey, I don't really want to go work in a restaurant. It is such an incredible career in yachts that like, and if you're already in South Florida, I would just say, and it's so easy to get on a boat. You could basically walk down a dock backwards and go, oh, I'm here. And you fall into a boat, and you're like, they take you with them. You're floating away.
Now, what about the personal chef, private chef industry too, or working with the athletes? Did you work with specific athletes, or did you work with the whole team?
I worked with, first it was Ronaldo Hill. He was my first client, and I just met him when I was bartending, and he came in and he said he needed a chef for the season. And I was like, well, I have a degree. And so I did like a little tryout stage with him, and he liked my food. And I ended up working for him for like 5 seasons. And through him, I met Ronnie Brown, and I did a lot of catering for them, because once you're kind of like in that little crew, of people, and they know they can trust you, it's like you're a dial-a chef at that point. So I would get calls and be like, hey, it's me and my girlfriend's anniversary, or me and my wife's anniversary. I don't really plan anything. Can you cook us dinner on the beach? This is where we'll be, and we're going to pull up in a limo. And so I would just, okay, sure, whatever you need, And so you do all these like emergency events for them, And so that's where the part where we're showing up and having dedication. Like there was times I missed out on birthday parties, and I missed out on whatever else, but I was working, and I chose to build this career so that later I could have all these credentials under my belt, and then that will help me have a better like a work-life balance later, And
I know social media is really big right now. I actually am teaching elective class on campus that's called social media training, food presentation for the culinary student. And we teach in blogs and YouTube and podcasts. And I know you've really embraced that, and you're an expert in many ways in that area. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit and what your platforms are.
So my platforms, I have a YouTube channel called Nikki Talks Food. And what I do is I've seen a lot of videos where it's just kind of like the taste made videos and things like that, where it's just a pair of hands and they're just dumping stuff into a pot or pan and zero explanation as to why things are, why the pie is golden brown, why the filling is gelatinized. My goal for my show is to bring what I have from culinary education and the science behind it, like, starches gelatinize and they swell when they're cooked, and that's what bonds things together, is like a blueberry pie. So the goal is to educate the home cook on, culinary fundamentals so that their food is tastier and better. And that they enjoy cooking, because there's nothing worse than following a recipe and thinking, oh, this is going to be good. And then it just is a disaster. And the reason why it's a disaster is because culinary fundamentals aren't followed. There's mixing methods that you can follow. There's, all kinds of methods that you could follow with sauce, preparing sauces and things like that, the fundamentals there. And so I'm here to basically help people make really awesome food that they would otherwise think was complicated.
And it's successful, right? You have quite a following, and it's...
I still have less than 1,000 subscribers. I have 760 last time I checked. Not that I check every day, but I do. But it is going very well. It's a really great hobby. It's not really like a job or anything like that, but it's a lot of fun and a creative outlet for me.
And they could find that on YouTube by just, searching.
Nikki Talks Food with 2 Ks, Nikki.
I'll put that in the show notes, too, in case anyone wants to check you out.
Oh, cool.
And what else have you been doing?
I've been live streaming a cooking class every Thursday night. I've teamed up with a coffee shop here in Tallahassee called Red Eye Coffee. Their CEO reached out to me, and so we decided to team up and make these meal kits. So the meal kits, we work with local farms. Like last night we had a class. It's every Thursday at 6 p.m. I teamed up with Crooked Row Farms here in Tallahassee, and we got this farm fresh chicken. And we made maple mustard garlic chicken with Asiago mac and cheese and green beans. And the cool thing is that the stuff in their kit is raw, but it's all washed and stuff. Like I wash all the green beans and pack it up, so they don't have to measure anything. All they have to do is...
Wait a minute. Now they're going to get the pack from you and they're going to cook it at home while watching you demonstrate. Wow, cool. What an awesome idea. How many people do that?
We only, because it's the cafe doesn't have a lot of space. They're not really set up for food production. So we only do 25 kits.
Is it limited at that? So if someone wanted to get involved, you got to get first come, first serve type thing.
Yeah, got to get the kit. Next week we'll do a kids kit. So we're going to do a fresh pasta. So it's just for kids.
How do they get the kit? It's FedEx to their house or mailed?
No, they pick it up at Red Eye Coffee. It's we sell tickets through Eventbrite. And once those tickets are done, that we have everybody tunes in on either my Facebook page or the Red Eye Facebook page or my YouTube channel, and I live stream cooking. And it's a cool interactive thing because people ask questions. I have some repeat people that come back every week, and they just love the idea of the sense of community, and we're helping local farms. The week before we had so many different businesses involved. We had Register Sausage because we did breakfast for dinner. Register Sausage, which is from here in Tallahassee. The Hawthorne Bakery, we bought Japanese milk bread, this beautiful milk bread, so sweet and yum. And we made a beautiful tiramisu French toast out of that, together. We did farm eggs from Paradise Found Farms. The coffee was from Red Eye. We used My Spice. So it was neat, to have that level of community together and be able to flash everybody's logo and stuff while we're cooking and support the community like that. It's a neat thing, Win-win for everybody, for the customer and for purveyors. Now tell us about your spice blend. Yeah, so my spice blend is pro seasoning. And it's a spice blend I've used my entire career. So anytime I was, working on the boat, or when I had my restaurant, or when I was teaching, because as you know, and I remember you guys doing this, like when I was in school, it was like we had a lot of events at school, right? You have always somebody coming through, and you got to make a banquet for whoever's coming, right? So I would always keep, a blend of the spice that I always made, salt, blend of peppers, paprika, garlic, and it's perfectly balanced. So you don't have to go every time you make something. You're going to put those flavors in as a base anyway. It's an all-purpose spice blend. It's the one and done. Like, this is what I'm putting in. And then if I want to change the flavor, I'll add Cajun or whatever behind that. But the main base is always the same. So because I couldn't really work without it, like I would always mix a batch and I would just put it in everything, I would make a batch for my parents and, and then finally, I said, you know what, I'm going to bottle this. It's good. It's very it's very convenient, because you just put the one spice in your food and all that kind of stuff. And I changed the salt to Himalayan pink salt. So it's a good salt. There's no anti-caking agents. There's no MSG. And if to my knowledge, it's the only all-purpose spice blend on the market that doesn't have all that bad stuff in it, and is like perfect for everything.
Where do they get that? Do they buy it locally, or is it shipped? Is it internet, e-commerce?
I have a website where I ship it all over the country. It's chefnikki.net, or you could do NikkiTalksFood.com. So it goes to the same place, and I'll ship anywhere in the country. I sell it locally. I just got into my first grocery store this week. So I'm in a grocery store called Community Co-op Market. And I sell it all around town locally in Tallahassee. I don't sell it in any stores outside of Tallahassee, but if you live outside the city, you can get it on my website.
That's great. So from culinary school, you look at all the opportunities. Pro players, yachts, YouTube stars, cooking classes, Cisco distributor.
I don't let any grass grow under my feet, that's for sure.
What's next? What's your future? What do you think is going to be down the road? What is your next goal?
I am putting a lot of effort into the spice blend, because originally it was just like, I'll have it and, kind of make a gentle entrance into the market. But now that I have a lot of skin in the game, I really am trying to push the spice and get it distributed other places. I have liability insurance now, so it's like I can sell it to anyone because they require that, So the hope is that the spice will do, well, and I'll make other blends, and then that will just be my business eventually. So we'll see.
Cool. Sounds exciting. Who are 3 people who have been most influential to you? Could be, personal, could be professional, who's had that impact?
I would say my sister has been very influential in my culinary career, because she went to culinary school first, because she's my older sister and was into food first. And I don't know that I would even be as much into food if she wasn't into food. So she was definitely super influential.
Did she go to Johnson & Wales as well?
She did. Let's see. Who else have I actually learned a lot of business, like negotiation and stuff, believe it or not, from my wife.
Oh, yeah?
So I definitely like honestly, like I've learned so much from her. She does so well with negotiations that it made me a better business person. So definitely I would say my wife as well. Let's see, career-wise. Obviously your classes were amazing.
Thank you.
As well. I could probably say the chef that I worked with on the yacht, Barry Orr. He was pretty influential. I learned a lot from him as far as yachting and just like life experiences. He would always just say, just be happy, and that like kind of echoes in my head, because like all how the food business is just like go until your eyeballs fall out and roll across the floor, and we would be working like 18 hours or something, and he would go, oh, just be happy. Okay, just be happy.
Let me think about the listeners out there, and if there's some, maybe a female or an older student, do you have any advice for them? I mean, were you treated any different at culinary school or at the industry or anything like that you would want to tell them to be aware of?
If they're female and in the food industry, they're already aware of. It is tough, and What my advice is, and this is how I try and network and when I interact with other female chefs, is I try not to try and compete too much, because we can be kind of competitive. And I feel like it's better to lift each other up and support. So it takes a tremendous amount of, sometimes you get undercut with things, and that's happened to me in my career with other female chefs. But I just try and take it on the chin and then turn around and support them. And in that way, it teaches them that that's our relationship. I'm not trying to compete with you. We can have similar products or whatever. It's fine. I let me help promote you. And then that's a better energy to be in than all this, competitive stuff.
Tell me about certifications and even continuing education, lifelong learning. How can you speak to that?
And the way that I see it is that, like, I'm a certified executive chef. I'm just about to renew for another 5 years. I also have a degree in culinary, and I have a degree in food and beverage management. It's basically their credentials, So if you want people to take you seriously, and you don't have any credentials behind you, it's hard to get anywhere, So for me, I started to excel really a lot when I got my CEC, 5 years ago, and it's hard. It's hard to do. It takes a lot of jumping through tiny flaming hoops, as I'm sure you're aware. But you got to kind of just put the paperwork through, put everything, jump through the tiny little hoops, and just try and have perseverance through all of the red tape you got to go through and all that kind of stuff. But you'll get there, and it's all about confidence too, and being prepared. I would say the certification has done well for me, and I'm going to keep renewing it until I don't have no need for it. But it is definitely truly helpful when you're trying to get a job or you can negotiate for a higher salary and stuff like that, because you go, look, I'm not just telling you I have all these credentials. I'm showing you a fistful of paperwork here, and these people say I know what I'm talking about. So it's a good negotiating tactic, is using those papers.
Yeah, that certification goes hand in hand with degrees. I mean, it just shows experience. It also shows, being able to do something as well as the academic track. What do you think is the future of culinary school?
I think that's the future. If we want good food, we need to have educated chefs. And if the private university, education is not sustainable, then it's hopefully will go public, because we still need to educate chefs, and we, you still have to teach fundamentals. It's still got to happen. So hopefully we'll learn how to, have culinary schools survive, so that we can continue to have educated chefs, and not just people that are like, oh, I think I know what I'm doing. We want those papers,
Now that you've had time away from culinary school, you got some perspective there. Looking back, all the money, the time, was it worth it? Would you do it again? Would you make any changes?
I would do it again. Yeah, for sure. It was totally worth it for me, because I got on a yacht and I was able to pay off everything. But for me, it's done very, very well. I wouldn't trade any of the experiences that I've had for anything. It's not like I have like all these desires to go and do all these things. I did so many of those things that I'm just like, okay, I'm good. Like, I'm good with a normal life now. And I've had all these incredible experiences, and I would not trade any of it for the world, So it did well for me.
Great. I know you're a cancer survivor. Can you speak a little bit how that may have shaped you into the person you are today, and how it affected?
Oh my gosh, yeah, two times. Right before I went to culinary school, which is probably kind of gave me a little push as well, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and it was a curable, cancer. I had my thyroid removed, and I had some radiation, and but I just kind of was like, let me do something bold. So that kind of probably pushed me in the culinary school direction. And then a year ago, actually today, a year ago, I had a routine mammogram because I turned 40. Then they kept inviting me back for more tests. I ended up with invasive ductal carcinoma. I didn't know I even had it. So that was the second time. I think that what kind of the effect that it has on you is just, like I said earlier, just be happy, just follow your gut and keep your relationships with people pleasant and happy. And because there's no reason to have any kind of competition or animosity between people. I'm more of a problem solver now, and more of, a little bit more laid back and all that kind of stuff.
As we come to the end of our chat today, before we wrap up, is there any last-minute advice or guidance you want to leave with the listeners, something you want to share with them?
Advice and guidance is, some of the things we've already kind of touched on, which is networking is key, showing up is key, hard work, knowing your craft, never stop learning, and don't always think that you know everything. There's always something you can learn. And one of the things that I actually learned when I was teaching was I was constantly learning from my students. They taught me all kinds of stuff. I'm knowledgeable now more than I was because I had the sense to listen to them and learn from them. So I think that, not letting your ego get in the way is hard for chefs because we tend to be emotional and ego monsters. But that's what makes us good chefs.
The passion.
It's passion. It's a career that is, its central force is passion. So just try and control your energy and channel your energy into something great.
Well, that is just about all the time we have for this episode. And I want to first thank you, Nikki, for coming on the show and sharing your culinary school story with all of us. We really appreciate your honesty and the insight and the time that you spent with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me on the show, and good luck in the future.
Great. Thanks a lot. Now, bye-bye.
Bye.
And a big thanks and appreciation also goes out to all of you, the listeners. We hope you enjoy the show and this episode. You all are a big part of this show, so please let us know what you think. Your comments are always welcome, and they help us in making the best show possible. You can email them to culinaryschoolstories@gmail.com. That's culinaryschoolstories@gmail.com. Or even leave us a voicemail at area code 207-835-1275. That's area code 207-835-1275. And if you like the show, we have a big ask of all of you, and that is to share the podcast with everyone you know and to give us a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Okay, until our next Culinary School Story, take care and be well. Bye-bye. Culinary School Stories is a proud member of the Food Media Network.